As the cold wind curled through Maplewood Hollow, Lena read the words that undid 8 years of loyalty. Your position has been dissolved, effective immediately. She blinked twice, unsure if it was the flicker of her aging laptop screen or the tremor rising through her chest. Her finger hovered over the trackpad, the email still open, its stark lines bleeding across the screen in Times New Roman like a verdict. The scent of reheated tomato soup lingered, faintly burnt, as the microwave beeped behind her, a mundane reminder that the world kept turning, even when hers had just stopped. Across the small living room, the mantel displayed the photo from last year's Thanksgiving. Her parents smiled broadly, her sister Paige raised a glass mid-laugh. Lena, half cut out by the frame, stood near the kitchen archway, refilling a wine glass with practiced precision. She remembered that night, how the turkey had been dry, how her mother complained about it but didn't lift a finger to help, how Paige had arrived late and left early. Lena had cleaned up alone, as always. She returned to the laptop. No severance. No offer for freelance. Just dissolved. The coffee maker hissed behind her, sputtering like it, too, had given up. She let it finish before pouring herself a mug, hands shaking not from the chill in the room but from what came next. Her thumb hovered over her mother's contact. A decade ago, she wouldn't have hesitated. But now? She hesitated. Still, practicality over pride. Rent was due. Utilities too. And groceries, well, she'd been living off soup and toast since payday got pushed. The phone rang only twice before her mother answered. Lena. Hi, Mom. She sat down, trying to steady her voice. I got laid off today. A pause. The kind that wasn't surprised but wasn't sympathetic either. Oh. They cut the whole department. Marketing's the first thing to go when budgets shrink, right? She gave a hollow laugh. I see, Marjorie said. That's unfortunate. I was wondering if, she bit her lip. I just need some help. Maybe a small loan for this month's rent? I'll figure it out from there. I promise. Marjorie sighed. Lena could picture her sitting at the kitchen table, mug in hand, radio low in the background playing gospel or Elvis. Lena, her mother said finally, you're not a kid anymore. You'll figure it out. From the background came the sound of a chair scraping. Then a new voice, welcome to adulthood, Lena. Of course. Paige. Lena's stomach nodded. I just lost my job, Paige. Join the club, her sister said breezily. You've had it easy for years. Time to learn how the rest of us survive. Easy? Lena blinked. Was working 60-hour weeks easy? Covering gifts for every birthday and never asking for help easy? I just needed, never mind, she said. Forget I asked. She ended the call and stared at the black screen. The room was too quiet now, save for the hum of the fridge and the tick of the old wall clock she hadn't changed since daylight savings. She pulled on her coat, still damp at the collar from that morning's frost, and left the apartment. The cold bit harder now, seeping through wool and resolve. Helen's diner sat on the corner of Pine and 2nd, just where it had always been, its windows glowing warm in the gray afternoon. A bell jingled overhead as she stepped in, and the scent of bacon grease and syrup wrapped around her like a blanket. Honey, grab a booth, anywhere you like, called the older waitress from behind the counter. Her name tag read Ruth, but Lena had known her since middle school. She slid into a booth by the window. Outside, bare trees danced in the wind. Inside, the radio played a Patsy Cline tune. The warmth of the room, the familiarity, made her eyes sting. What can I get you, sweetheart? Ruth asked, pen poised. Just a slice of pumpkin pie, Lena said. Come in right up. The pie arrived moments later, slightly uneven, whipped cream a little lopsided, perfect. She took one bite and the tears came quietly. She didn't sob. She didn't sniff. She just sat there, eyes glassy, spoon still in hand, as the diner buzzed around her with stories of parades and casseroles and who was bringing what to Thanksgiving. A local paper sat at the end of the booth. On the cover, Annual Maplewood Parade returns this Friday. Below it, a blurry photo of last year's floats and a quote from Mayor Lanning about community spirit. Lena stared out the window. Maybe community didn't always mean family. Maybe kindness came from other places. She wrapped the pie in 2 napkins and left a few crumpled bills under the plate. Ruth winked at her. "Take care, honey." She stepped back into the cold, the wind sharper now, but her coat felt just a little warmer from within. As she heads home, her phone buzzes, an automated utility notice: "Your account is past due." The scent of antiseptic and the soft beeping of machines greeted Lena as her eyelids fluttered open to a white ceiling. The light overhead wasn't harsh, but it was unrelenting. Her body felt heavy, her limbs slow to respond. For a moment, she wasn't sure where she was. Then the dull ache in her side, the throbbing beneath her ribs, the tug of something at her wrist, and brought it all back in fragments: the sidewalk, the horn, the screech, a blur of headlights. She blinked again. A nurse passed by the open door, pushing a tray. From somewhere nearby, a tinny version of a Silver Bells played on the radio. Lena turned her head slowly. The room was sterile but quiet, softened by a small pine garland hung loosely along the curtain rail. On the wall opposite her bed hung a dry erase board: Room 204B, Nurse Ellie, Dr. Donahue. A tap on the door came just before it opened. A tall man with silver hair and glasses stepped in, chart in hand. "You're awake," he said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Donahue. How are you feeling, Miss Whitmore?" Lena tried to speak but her throat caught. She nodded instead, and he moved closer. "You've had surgery, your left hip was fractured. You're lucky." The driver stopped in time to avoid a worse impact. He checked her 4-line. "You'll need physical therapy, but you're stable now. Do you remember what happened?" Her voice cracked. "Crossing the street. Going home." He nodded. "A delivery truck ran a red light. You were unconscious when the paramedics arrived." She turned her head toward the window. Snow dusted the sill outside, the sky a flat gray. "I notified the emergency contacts on your intake forms," he added gently. Her stomach tightened. "Anyone call?" He paused. "Not yet." He patted her blanket and offered a practiced, reassuring look. "Rest. Nurse Ellie will check in soon." Moments after he left, a soft humming drifted in ahead of the nurse's footsteps. A middle-aged woman with a kind face and sensible shoes walked in carrying a mug and a small bowl. "Hey, there," she said with a voice like warm toast. "Broth and ginger tea. You look like you could use both." "Thanks," Lena whispered. "I'm Ellie. You've got me for the morning shift." She arranged the tray on the bedside table. "Let me know if you're cold or need more pillows. I'm a fan of over-pillowing." Lena almost smiled. Ellie poured tea, stirring gently. "You gave us a bit of a scare. Came in talking nonsense about email passwords. I figured you were one of the smart ones, always working, even on a stretcher." Lena let out a soft breath that might have been a laugh. "Something like that. You've got no visitors listed, but maybe they're on their way." Ellie glanced at the dry erase board. "Thanksgiving's coming. I always hope folks show up before the turkey." Lena didn't answer. Her phone was in the drawer. She reached for the call button. Ellie retrieved it, wiping it down with a tissue. "Be careful with it. Hospital Wi-Fi's slower than molasses." The screen lit up. One missed call, her old boss. No messages. No texts. She typed slowly, "In hospital. I'm okay." Then hit send. The message marked delivered. Nothing more. Ellie quietly adjusted Lena's phone. She hummed under her breath, an old hymn Lena recognized but couldn't name. Something soft and southern, like a song you don't remember learning but always knew. Across the hall, a laugh rang out. A man in his 70s lay in bed surrounded by 2 grandsons holding a foil-wrapped pie. His daughter, in a red coat, was adjusting flowers in the window. "Smells like your favorite," the younger boy said. The older man wiped his eyes. Lena looked away. Later that afternoon, the light outside began to fade. She tapped her gallery app. Photos scrolled by: last summer's sunset over Maplewood Lake, her old office Christmas party, a blurry shot of her and Colby laughing over tacos. Then one stopped her. A much older picture. She sat at a wooden counter, maybe 8 years old, hands covered in flour. Her mother, younger and smiling, leaned over her with a mixing bowl. Her apron read, "Thanksgiving Queen." The memory stung. The smell of cinnamon. Her mom's laugh. A brief moment in time when love felt like it had a shape. She pressed the phone to her chest. Dinner came in a beige plastic tray. Turkey slices. Instant mash. Gravy that never quite solidified. She left it untouched. Ellie returned with a flannel blanket. Something cozier than that hospital linen. "Thanks," Lena murmured. Ellie nodded. "Let me know if you want to talk." "I'm okay." Ellie smiled faintly. "Of course you are." The hallway outside quieted. Evening settled in. Lena turned off the lamp and let the silence stretch, broken only by soft carols from the radio at the nurse's desk. A volunteer drops off a plain brown bag at the foot of her bed, no name, but it smells like homemade stew. "Delivery for Miss Whitmore," Nurse Ellie grinned, placing a bowl of stew and a folded napkin on Lena's tray. "Smells like Mr. Callahan's cooking to me." Lena blinked at the warm ceramic bowl now steaming on the table beside her hospital bed. The scent was rich, familiar: rosemary, beef, something sweet like parsnips. Ellie adjusted Lena's blanket as she tucked the tray closer. "He said he'd drop it off around sunrise," Ellie added. "Didn't even wait for a thank you. That man moves like fog, quiet and steady." Lena smiled faintly and unfolded the napkin. A small scrap of lined paper was tucked inside, the edges creased from careful folding. "Figured you could use something warm. Theo." She remembered last fall the Theo Callahan, nearly 80 and stubborn, insisting he didn't need help with his leaky roof. She'd seen him climbing the ladder alone. Against her better judgment, Lena had jogged across the street and helped hold the ladder, passing him shingles like they were old friends. He'd offered her a sandwich afterward and refused to let her leave without 2 jars of homemade jam. The stew was perfect: tender meat, soft carrots, earthy and real. Lena took one slow bite and closed her eyes. It was the first thing she tasted in days that didn't remind her of aluminum trays or salt packets. Outside, the sky had lightened into a gauzy silver, snow still falling in lazy sheets. A nurse rolled a cart past her room with a small speaker playing instrumental jazz renditions of carols. Somewhere, a TV murmured with crowd sounds from the Macy's parade. Lena could almost picture the giant balloons floating through a city she'd never seen in person. A knock interrupted the moment. The door opened gently. "Hope I'm not barging in," said a soft voice. Colby stood in the doorway holding a tote bag and a tablet under his arm. He wore a plaid scarf, slightly askew, and his cheeks were pink from the cold. "Colby." Lena blinked. "You didn't have to. You trained me, remember?" he said, stepping in. "Back when I couldn't tell a headline from a tagline." She laughed, surprised at the sound of it. "I brought contraband," he added, revealing a takeout cup. "Black coffee. Not hospital grade." Lena reached for it with both hands. "I might cry." He sat in the armchair by the window and opened the tablet. "So? I've been thinking. There's this local nonprofit, Maplewood Reads. You remember them? The reading program at the library?" Lena nodded. "I used to volunteer Saturday mornings." "Well, they're applying for a small grant. I'm helping them with digital outreach." "But I'm not you." She raised an eyebrow. "Meaning, you're the brain. I'm just the guy who remembers where the semicolons go." He placed the tablet in her lap. A simple website mock-up was half finished, with a placeholder banner that read, "Bringing Stories to Small Towns." Lena scrolled slowly. This isn't bad. It's not you good, he said. But I thought maybe you could look it over. From here. If you feel like it. A sudden knock made them both look up. Nurse Ellie peeked in again, this time holding a small stack of cards tied with twine. These just came from the front desk, she said. Someone from the children's section at the library dropped them off. Ellie set them at the foot of the bed and gave Lena a little wink. Seems like Thanksgiving's come to you, after all. Lena untied the bundle. Crayon-colored cards spilled across her lap. Thank you for reading to us. Happy Turkey Day, Miss Lena. Your voice makes books better. I miss story time. My brother does too. She ran a finger over the scribbled hearts and lopsided turkeys. A lump caught in her throat. She placed the cards in order along the blanket like a gallery. Ellie returned with a plate, slightly tilted from her brisk pace. Pumpkin pie, she said, homemade by the nurse on floor 3. We're splitting it. She handed Lena a fork and took the chair opposite Colby. Don't tell the dietitian. They ate in near silence, jazz still playing faintly from down the hall. Somewhere, someone laughed. Lena leaned back, pie finished, cards still spread before her. Dr. Donahue stepped in gently, folder in hand. Just wanted to check in before my shift ends, he said. Also, this came in. He handed Lena a folded piece of hospital message paper. It bore only 2 lines, typed neatly. From Marjorie Whitmore. Message, hope you're healing. Lena stared at the words. No love, Mom. No, call us. Just, hope you're healing. She nodded once and handed it back to him. They're strangers to me now. Then turns toward Colby and asks, tell me more about that pitch. They sent this, Dr. Donahue said, placing a plain envelope on Lena's tray. No return address, just this. Lena looked at the small, off-white envelope. The hospital lighting made the paper seem yellower than it probably was. It bore no handwriting, just her name typed in a clinical, impersonal font. No stamp. No note of care. Just something that had been handed off, like a task checked from a list. Dr. Donahue gave her a sympathetic smile, then a small nod before exiting the room. The door eased shut with a gentle click, but Lena didn't move. The scent of cinnamon floated in from the hallway. She could hear soft humming from somewhere nearby, a volunteer's voice threading its way through the hospital corridors like a lullaby. Oh come, Emmanuel echoed faintly from the chapel downstairs, the melody more melancholy than hopeful. Outside, snow settled in thick layers on the ledges, muting the world beyond the windows. Lena opened the envelope. Inside was a half sheet of printer paper. 1 sentence. Hope you're recovering. Marjorie. Not love, Mom. Not we miss you. Not even a question about how she felt, or when she'd be discharged. She read the line twice, then folded it again with calm precision. No reaction rose to the surface, just a dull echo where emotion used to be. She placed the envelope in the drawer beside her water cup and shut it quietly. Ellie walked in moments later, carrying a small plastic bag and 2 foam cups. Hospital coffee, she said cheerfully. I wouldn't serve it to my dog, but sometimes it's the warmth that counts. She handed Lena a cup and sat in the armchair with a sigh. Bad mail, she asked, nodding toward the drawer. Just, expected, Lena said. It's how they do concern. Neatly, with no mess. Ellie sipped her coffee. I went 10 years without a word from my son. 10. First it was college, then a fight, then birthdays missed. Then it just became silence. Lena turned toward her. Ellie's gaze stayed on the snow outside. He came back, Ellie added. But the years didn't. Lena didn't reply. She let the steam from the coffee warm her hands. The room quieted until the phone on her nightstand buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but curiosity nudged her thumb. She tapped answer. Lena, a voice asked. Raspy, a little too loud. "And Bernice." Lena sat up slightly. "I heard about your accident. Your mother didn't say much, just that you were out of work and handling things. I had to find the hospital myself." Lena's throat tightened. "You've always been the one giving," Bernice said. "Since you were small. Always the helper." "I just thought they'd be here," Lena whispered. "I know," Bernice said gently. "Sometimes, love doesn't come from where we expect. Doesn't mean it isn't real somewhere else." They spoke only a few minutes longer, Bernice promising to call again, maybe visit after her church bazaar. Lena hung up with a soft thank you and rested the phone beside the framed photo on her nightstand. It was the same one Ellie had brought in days ago, Lena, age 7, in a corduroy dress, hugging a snowman she and her father had built. Her cheeks red, her mittens mismatched. Her grin wider than the Ohio sky. Colby arrived just before lunch, his boots dusted with snow and a gleam in his eyes. "We got the first-round approval," he said, waving a printout. "If we submit a sample pitch by Monday, we're in for the community grant." "That's great," Lena said, surprised by the flicker of excitement in her own voice. He placed a folder at the foot of her bed. "You don't have to say yes. But I figured, maybe something light. A project. When you're ready." Lena looked at the folder, then back at the drawer. Her mother's note stayed sealed away. Forgotten for now. Later that night, with the hallway quiet and the chapel music just a faint murmur, Lena pulled out her notebook. She wrote slowly, not to anyone in particular, but with intent. "You do not need permission to heal. You do not need applause to be worthy. You are allowed to let go." She stopped, stared at the words, then closed the notebook. "She tells Ellie, I think I'm ready to go home next week." "We got the grant," Colby beamed, holding out a paper. "Lena, we're going live next week." Lena stood just inside the entrance of Maplewood Public Library, leaning slightly on her cane. The scent of old books and citrusy wood polish washed over her in a wave of memory. Her boots tracked a light trail of snow onto the mat, and the cold air clung to her coat like static. It had been over a year since she'd last stepped into this place, and yet everything looked exactly the same, except for the explosion of hand-cut snowflakes taped to every window. Some crooked, some missing arms, but all proudly made. The banner caught her eye first. It stretched over the main desk in bold, blue letters, "Welcome back, Miss Lena." Beneath it, helium balloons bumped lazily against the wood-paneled ceiling. She blinked and turned back to Colby, who was grinning like a child on Christmas morning. "I mean it," he said. "Your edits sealed the deal. They said our mission statement had a heart. That was all you." "I just moved commas around," Lena said. "You moved people." A small group of children clustered near the reading nook spotted her. One girl gasped and ran ahead, her snow boots squeaking against the floor. "Miss Lena," she called out. Others followed, arms open, faces lit. Lena crouched as best she could, steadying herself with the cane, and accepted a flurry of quick hugs and bright voices. Their warmth cut through her guarded edges. Colby helped her to a soft armchair near the fireplace, where a string of battery-operated lights twinkled in alternating reds and golds. On the coffee table sat a printed mock-up of their new website. The header read, "Maplewood Reads, Stories That Bind Us." "I used your old template," Colby said. "Even kept your serif font." She smiled, flipping through the pages with careful fingers. Photos of families, grandparents with toddlers, a clip of last summer's storytime picnic. It all looked brighter somehow. A man passed by, tipping his cap. "Miss Whitmore," he said. "Don't know if you remember me, but you helped me sort out my Medicare paperwork last year. Didn't even make me feel dumb about it." Lena nodded, startled by the memory. "Of course, Mr. Rainey. How are you?" He patted his chest. "Still ticking, thanks to you." The community room had been transformed. 2 long tables stretched end to end, covered in mismatched tablecloths and dotted with dishes both homemade and store-bought. The aroma was rich and comforting, green bean casserole, stuffing laced with sage, cranberry sauce with whole berries. Steam curled from foil pans. Someone lit cinnamon candles. A place card waited at the center seat of the table, Story Keeper. She hesitated when she saw it. Colby gently guided her forward. It was Theo's idea. Lena's eyes found Mr. Callahan at the end of the table, half hidden by a decorative paper turkey. He raised a glass of cider toward her, nodded once, and returned to slicing rolls. His hands, even in old age, moved with the confidence of someone who'd built things all his life. Children circled the table, weaving between adults, laughing as they stole early bites of pie. The radio played a soft instrumental of "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Colby clinked a fork gently against his glass. "Before we eat, just one thing," he said. "Some of us, we wanted to say thanks." Lena helped build more than a website. She built a place. For stories, and for people. So, here's to our story keeper. Everyone clapped lightly. Lena felt her cheeks flush. She stood slowly, gripping the back of her chair. Her cane rested beside her like a witness. "This is the first year I feel truly seen." The room quieted, not in silence, but in reverence. After dinner, the warmth in the room settled like a quilt. Plates were cleared, pie passed again, cider refilled. Colby showed a slideshow of old photos on a projector screen, kids with finger puppets, a toddler asleep on a beanbag, Theo in an apron with flour on his nose. Lena wandered briefly toward the coat rack. She spotted a little girl sitting beside her mother on the floor, reading a picture book aloud. The woman smiled and tucked the child's hair behind her ear. Something in Lena's chest softened and ached all at once. The door opened behind her. A nurse from the hospital, one she barely remembered, stepped in with a dusting of snow on her shoulders and a small manila envelope in hand. She approached carefully. "Sorry to interrupt. This was dropped off for you earlier this week. I forgot to leave it at the front desk." Lena took the envelope, its corner slightly bent. "Your parents sent this." Again. Christmas morning arrived, gentle and quiet, like forgiveness without words. Snow lined the rooftops of Maplewood Hollow, and the community center stood like a warm lantern on the edge of town, its windows glowing amber behind a fringe of frosted glass. Inside, the hum of voices blended with the soft crackle of a vinyl record. Bing Crosby's voice drifted through the rafters, steady and smooth, wrapping the air in nostalgia. Lena moved steadily along the row of folding tables, setting out mismatched plates and cloth napkins trimmed with green thread. She no longer used the cane. Each step felt earned. Her boots left light prints on the linoleum floor, damp from a morning snowfall, and her cheeks were pink from the cold but flushed, too, with something deeper, ease. Colby untangled a string of battery lights above the cider table. "That one's blinking," he muttered. "It's a Christmas miracle," Lena replied, smiling as she unfolded another place card. Ellie arrived with a tray of miniature quiches and a red thermos tucked under one arm. "Coffee," she announced, "but the good kind. From my own kitchen." She poured Lena a cup, steam curling around her mittened hands. "You're glowing," Ellie said, nudging her gently. "Must be the carbs." Pastor Tom stood near the front, adjusting a crooked star atop a faux evergreen. He waved them all closer. "Friends," he said warmly, "if I could borrow a moment before we dig in." Chairs scraped as the circle gathered, warm coats draped over backs, children quieting at their parents' sides. The smell of cinnamon rolls and baked ham lingered in the air, dancing with a hint of pine from the wreaths tied to each window. "We are here because someone believed in stories," Pastor Tom said. "Someone who reminded us that kindness doesn't need fanfare. That showing up matters more than grand gestures." He gestured to the table's center. A single chair, draped in a patchwork quilt and marked with a simple handwritten sign, "Blessing Seat." Colby reached for Lena's elbow. "It's for you," he said softly. Lena hesitated, then sat. The room clapped gently. A few heads bowed. She smiled, not shy this time, but grounded. Children from the reading group lined up behind her, each carrying a handmade ornament, stars, trees, even one shaped like an open book. They hung them on a pine bough propped in a tin pail, giggling as glitter transferred from fingers to sleeves. Mr. Theo sat beside the cider table, a scarf tucked neatly into his collar. He raised a small mug toward her, the corner of his mouth curling. She nodded back. Later, as the meal wound down and carols played, "I'll Be Home for Christmas," soft and slow, Lena stepped into the coatroom. She pulled her wool jacket from the peg and reached into its pocket. The envelope was still there. Untouched. Its edge slightly frayed now from weeks of being carried but ignored. She held it between her fingers for a long moment, listening to the laughter beyond the door. Then, with quiet resolve, she crossed to the fireplace and laid the envelope gently among the embers. It caught slowly, the flame curling through the paper like a breath. Ellie appeared beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. Lena looked over and said, "Some things aren't meant to be opened." Ellie nodded. Colby clinked a cider bottle against another. "To chosen families." The toast rippled around the room, cider raised high, the warmth louder than the words. Lena stepped outside, tugging her scarf snug against her neck. Snowflakes drifted like ash from the sky, landing soundless on the street. She passed the old church just as carolers began the first verses of Silent Night. Their voices rose slowly, worn but strong, like wool blankets handed down across generations. From across the courtyard, a small girl in a purple coat waved frantically. "Miss Lena, come help decorate the tree." Lena smiled. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." She turns and walks in, no limp, no weight. On a quiet Christmas morning, Lena stood without a cane, surrounded not by relatives bound by blood, but by neighbors and friends who had chosen to love her anyway. Her journey from silence to belonging was stitched together by small, unexpected acts of kindness, each one a gentle reminder that the heart recognizes care, no matter the form it takes. Sometimes, the ones who stand by us in stillness speak louder than those whose voices never reach. And often, the ones we overlook carry the light we didn't know we needed. Like a porch lamp on a snowy night, a single act of grace can guide us back to warmth. If this story touched something quiet in you, perhaps it's time to pass that quiet warmth along, to someone waiting, just out of sight.